Woman, listen. There's a fire waking up inside you, a kind of strength you didn't even know you carried, and God is about to make it rise so high that your entire family won't even have words for it. You've been walking through seasons where people looked at you and thought they already knew your story, thought they already judged your ending before you even got to your next chapter. But God's been writing something behind the scenes that nobody saw coming. You've been walking with wounds nobody noticed, praying prayers nobody heard, carrying weight nobody helped you lift, and still you kept moving. Still you kept believing. Still you kept fighting with a heart that refused to break. And now heaven is stepping into your timeline, shifting things you thought were stuck, opening doors that were locked for years, and lifting you to a place your family never imagined you would stand. They're about to watch you rise in a way that makes them blink twice, question what changed, wonder how you went from overlooked to unstoppable. They're about to see God's fingerprints all over your life, because this rise isn't accidental. It isn't luck. It's divine. It's the reward of every tear you swallowed, every moment you stayed loyal, every time you chose faith when fear tried to drown you. God is lifting you in a way that will turn silence into shock, doubt into respect, and your past into proof that nothing can stop a woman chosen for elevation. A woman rising from silence, pain, and underestimation into undeniable strength is a journey that rarely happens in the open. It begins quietly, in moments when she sits alone with her thoughts and realizes that the world around her has never fully recognized who she truly is. She has spent years playing roles others assigned to her, carrying expectations that were never hers to begin with, and enduring the weight of being unseen even when she was giving her all. But it is in that silence, in that unseen space, where her real transformation begins. Pain becomes her teacher, not her prison. Every disappointment reshapes her resilience. Every heartbreak adds depth to her character. And every moment of underestimation fuels the fire within her that refuses to stay small. She begins to rise long before anyone notices, because the rise starts internally, in her mindset, in her spirit, in the way she begins to understand her worth. She starts choosing herself in ways she never did before. She starts speaking softly but standing firmly. She starts realizing that the world only underestimated her because she had not yet revealed the full power of who she was becoming. As she grows, she no longer allows fear to dictate her steps or allow the opinions of those who never supported her to define her limitations. The same people who dismissed her strength will soon witness her stepping into a version of herself she once doubted she could reach. She begins moving differently, thinking differently, believing differently. She carries a new kind of confidence, one that is not loud or boastful, but rooted deeply in everything she survived. She no longer breaks under pressure, because pressure is the very thing that shaped her. Her pain becomes a foundation rather than a fracture. And even though she walks with scars, she carries them like proof of her endurance, not marks of defeat. Her rise is unstoppable because it is not fueled by the desire to impress others, but by the need to honor herself. She starts setting boundaries that protect her peace. She stops apologizing for wanting more. She stops shrinking to make others comfortable. She starts stepping into opportunities she once believed were out of reach. And slowly, quietly, she transforms into the woman she was always meant to be. Those who underestimated her will see a shift in the way she carries herself, more grounded, more certain, more unshakable. Her rise is undeniable because it is authentic, a natural evolution shaped by faith, perseverance, and a deep inner knowing that her story is far from over. It is the rise of someone who was buried by life but refused to stay under the weight, someone who learned that silence is not weakness and pain is not the end. It is the rise of a woman who finally realizes her power and steps into it with grace, strength, and purpose. The divine shift God is bringing into her life that no one in her family expected begins long before the signs show up in the physical world. It starts in moments where she feels a strange restlessness, a quiet tug in her spirit telling her that the life she's been living is too small for the calling placed inside her. She begins to sense that something is changing even if she cannot explain it. God starts to rearrange her emotions, her priorities, her desires, and her connections. guiding her into a season where everything ordinary begins to feel uncomfortable. This shift is not loud or dramatic at first. It begins as a whisper, a feeling that she is meant for more than the limited story people have written about her. Her family may not understand it because they have only seen her through the lens of who she used to be, not who she is becoming. They have watched her struggle, watched her break, watched her survive, but they haven't realized that surviving was preparing her for elevation. The divine shift becomes visible when God starts closing doors that no longer align with her destiny. Opportunities she once chased suddenly lose their appeal. People she once relied on begin to fade from her life. Habits that kept her stuck begin to feel unbearable. This shift is not meant to punish her, it is meant to position her. God removes what drains her so he can refill her. He disrupts her comfort so he can develop her character. He quiets the noise around her so she can hear his direction more clearly. In this season, she begins to grow spiritually in ways her family never expected. She prays differently, she thinks differently, she walks with more intention. She no longer reacts from fear, but responds from faith, trusting that the shift is leading her somewhere greater. What makes this shift surprising to her family is that it does not match the version of her they've always known. They might remember the woman who doubted herself, who settled, who carried everyone else's burdens while ignoring her own dreams. But now they're witnessing someone who has stepped into a new level of strength, purpose, and spiritual awareness. They see her changing but can't quite understand how. They don't realize that God is elevating her in ways that eyes cannot see yet. The shift is divine because it is supernatural. It cannot be explained through logic or circumstances. It is God rewriting her narrative, preparing to bless her in ways that reflect his power, not her limitations. And when the shift becomes undeniable, her rise will surprise even those who thought they knew her best, because the transformation God brings always exceeds human expectations. The journey of breaking generational patterns and stepping into a higher calling is one of the most challenging yet rewarding paths a woman can walk. It begins with a deep recognition that the cycles of struggle, limitation, or unfulfilled potential that have shaped her family history do not have to define her. She starts to see the invisible chains, the habits, beliefs, and unspoken rules that have been passed down, keeping generations bound to fear, doubt, and stagnation. It is not easy to confront these inherited limitations because they often come wrapped in love, tradition, or unquestioned loyalty. Yet, she understands that to rise fully into her purpose, she must break free. Every decision she makes becomes intentional, every choice aimed at stepping outside the confines of what was expected, what was tolerated, and what was considered inevitable. She begins to challenge the narratives that once silenced her, realizing that her life can rewrite what has been written before. In this process, she is not just lifting herself, she's also redefining the legacy for those who will come after her. Breaking generational patterns requires courage because it often puts her at odds with the familiar. Family members may resist the changes they see, interpreting her growth as rebellion rather than evolution. Friends and relatives who have grown accustomed to her staying small may struggle to accept the new version of her. Yet, she moves forward, understanding that stepping into a higher calling is bigger than seeking approval or avoiding conflict. She learns to trust the guidance of God over the comfort of familiar expectations, recognizing that her higher purpose is not about pleasing others, but about honoring the destiny she was born to fulfill. Every sacrifice she makes, every discomfort she endures is an investment in the life she was designed to live. As she continues on this journey, she begins to embody a level of integrity, resilience, and vision that sets her apart. Her actions, even the quiet ones, start to speak louder than words. She stops perpetuating the cycles that once held her family captive, choosing instead to model faith, discipline, and perseverance. The higher calling she steps into is not only about personal success, it is about becoming a catalyst for transformation in her sphere of influence. She realizes that her rise is part of a greater plan, a divine orchestration that positions her to impact not only her own life, but also the lives of her children, siblings, and extended family. Through this journey, she discovers the depth of her strength and the scope of her potential. She learns that freedom from generational limitation is not just a gift, but a responsibility. To live boldly, to act with intention, and to inspire others through her example. Her rise becomes inevitable because it is rooted in faith, deliberate action, and a refusal to settle for anything less than what God designed for her life. Every barrier she overcomes, every old pattern she disrupts, brings her closer to the fullness of the calling on her life, setting the stage for a transformation that is powerful, undeniable, and destined to leave a mark beyond her immediate world. The quiet sacrifices she made that will soon speak louder than any explanation are the invisible threads that have been weaving the tapestry of her rise. For years, she has given without recognition, endured without complaint, and believed without proof. She has sacrificed comfort, convenience, and sometimes even her own desires for the sake of others, often standing in the shadows while life seemed to pass by. Late nights, early mornings, and moments of solitude became her constant companions as she worked tirelessly to build a foundation that few could see or understand. The sacrifices were not always glamorous. They were in the overlooked acts of patience, the small decisions to choose long-term gain over short-term relief, and the consistent discipline to remain faithful when results were invisible. Every act, no matter how quiet, became a deposit in the account of her destiny, shaping her into a woman prepared for the life God has been orchestrating. She learned early on that true sacrifice is rarely rewarded immediately. It is often misunderstood, sometimes criticized, and frequently taken for granted. Yet she continued, not out of obligation to anyone, but out of devotion to the calling she felt stirring within her. She refused to allow the lack of recognition to diminish her effort. She understood that God sees what others overlook, that every tear, every moment of exhaustion, every lonely decision is noticed in the divine ledger. Her faith became her anchor, allowing her to endure seasons where the weight seemed unbearable and the future seemed uncertain. The quiet work, the unseen struggles, and the hidden victories all prepared her for the moment when her rise would be undeniable. These sacrifices also cultivated her character, teaching her resilience, humility, and strength. She became patient in ways that could not be taught, resilient in ways that could not be faked, and wise in ways that only experience could instill. The discipline of giving up what was comfortable for what was necessary refined her focus and clarified her purpose. Every choice to endure rather than escape, to persevere rather than quit, and to trust rather than despair contributed to the woman she was becoming. Her growth was not dependent on applause or affirmation. It was rooted in the knowledge that her sacrifices were creating space for divine elevation, shaping her into a vessel capable of receiving what she had long been prepared for. Soon, those quiet sacrifices will speak for themselves. The people who once doubted her, overlooked her, or failed to recognize her dedication will witness the fruit of her labor in ways that cannot be denied or ignored. The sacrifices that once seemed invisible will become the proof of her endurance and the evidence of God's faithfulness. Her rise will not need explanation because her life will be the declaration. Every hardship she endured, every personal comfort she surrendered, and every quiet act of perseverance will converge to reveal a woman transformed, elevated, and unstoppable, leaving no question about the source of her strength or the power behind her ascent. The moment God turns her struggle into a testimony that shocks even her closest people is a moment that comes after seasons of silent endurance and unwavering faith. She has carried burdens that nobody could see, fought battles that seemed endless, and faced challenges that at times felt impossible to overcome. Every tear she shed, every prayer whispered in the dark, every night spent wrestling with doubt and fear has been part of a divine process preparing her for a revelation that will leave the world around her stunned. What was once perceived as weakness will now be recognized as strength. What was once overlooked will now demand attention. God transforms the pain she endured into a story of victory, turning scars into symbols of resilience and struggles into stepping stones for greatness. Her testimony becomes a living proof that endurance, faith, and commitment to God's timing produce results far beyond human comprehension. Her closest people, those who have witnessed her struggles, may have doubted whether she could rise or whether she could fulfill the purpose set before her. They may have offered advice born of skepticism or tried to protect her from the unknown by keeping her confined to what was familiar. Yet, when God intervenes, the transformation is undeniable. The struggles that once seemed to define her now highlight her triumph. The very obstacles that others believed would hold her back become the foundation of her testimony. Those who once questioned her potential now see a woman who has been molded through trials, strengthened by adversity, and equipped with wisdom that can only come from walking through fire. This moment of revelation is not about proving them wrong. It is about showing the power of God working in her life, turning every setback into a set up for something greater. Her testimony is powerful because it is authentic. It is not constructed to impress or gain approval. It is the natural result of living faithfully, even when circumstances seemed impossible. People will be shocked not because she sought attention, but because they failed to recognize the depth of her perseverance and the divine orchestration behind her journey. Every trial becomes a chapter, every tear a verse, on every quiet act of obedience a testimony that speaks louder than words ever could. God uses these moments to elevate her beyond expectations, placing her in spaces where her influence grows, her purpose is realized, and her rise becomes undeniable. The transformation also carries a ripple effect. Those who witness her testimony cannot ignore the spiritual dimension of her rise. It challenges their understanding of possibility and inspires them to recognize that struggles are not permanent prisons, but stages of preparation. The woman who once walked quietly, carrying burdens alone, now stands as a testament to divine timing and unwavering faith. Her rise shocks and inspires simultaneously because it reflects the unseen hand of God working through perseverance, faith, and relentless commitment. It is a reminder that every struggle endured in faith is a seed for a powerful testimony, and that the rise prepared in silence will inevitably speak louder than any explanation ever could. The unstoppable rise that reflects faith, resilience, and divine timing is not a sudden occurrence, but the culmination of years spent believing when belief seemed impossible. It is the rise of a woman who refused to let circumstances define her, who refused to accept the limits others placed on her, and who refused to shrink in the face of adversity. Her faith became the engine driving her forward, even when the path seemed unclear, when doors remained closed, or when people doubted her vision. She learned to trust in a power greater than herself, understanding that timing is never accidental and that every delay, every setback, every moment of waiting was part of a divine plan to prepare her for elevation. Her rise is unstoppable because it is anchored in a foundation that cannot be shaken by opinion, circumstance, or fear. Resilience has become her signature, forged in the fires of trials and hardships that would have stopped many others. She has endured seasons of disappointment, rejection, and invisibility, and yet she stands taller for having survived them. Each obstacle has strengthened her resolve, teaching her that setbacks are temporary, challenges are lessons, and endurance is a mark of true strength. She has learned to rise even when the world says she cannot, to persist even when the path is unclear, and to believe even when hope feels distant. Her resilience is not loud or boastful, but it is evident in the consistency of her actions, the discipline of her decisions, and the unwavering determination to move forward no matter the cost. Divine timing is the thread that ties her rise together. Every step she has taken, every choice she has made, and every moment she has waited in patience has been orchestrated to align with God's perfect plan. She understands that rushing, forcing, or compromising would only hinder the power of her ascent. She has learned to trust that the right opportunities, the right people and the right circumstances will arrive at the exact moment they are meant to, and that when they do, her rise will be undeniable. This trust in divine timing allows her to move with confidence and purpose, knowing that she is not racing against the world, but flowing in alignment with a higher design. Her unstoppable rise also transforms those around her, creating a ripple effect that cannot be ignored. Family, friends, and even strangers witness the power of her faith and the results of her perseverance. They see a woman who has faced pain, endured silence, and overcome doubt, yet now moves with authority, clarity, and influence. Her rise inspires others to believe in the possibility of transformation. to trust in their own journeys, and to recognize that faith coupled with resilience and divine timing produces results that are impossible to replicate through effort alone. Ultimately, this rise is unstoppable because it is authentic, earned, and ordained. It is the manifestation of a life lived faithfully, a heart strengthened by trials, and a spirit aligned with purpose. Every step forward, every challenge overcome, and every act of patience contributes to a momentum that cannot be halted, a momentum that propels her toward fulfillment, impact, and recognition in ways that leave the world and her family both astonished and inspired.